Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Bubblehead Fantasy Football Podcast with my co-host Eric today. Why don't you tell everybody what we're talking about today?
Hey there, Robert. Today we're going to be discussing Week 3 of the NFL and Week 4 of college football, and just the people and storylines that we're really interested in right now.
Yeah. There's quite a few big news this week. Just wanted to kind of start with some of that, right? So David Montgomery and Swift both look like they might miss this week and pay me a little bit more. Do you want to kind of talk about that? What's your expectation there?
So the thing is that there is a very easy replacement for both of them right now to me. Khalil Herbert has looked great in the limited opportunities he's had to start over the last couple of years, a year and a half. And Jamal Williams has been a forward on the side for DeAndre Swift owners for the last year and a half. They're both top 10 running backs through 3 weeks. Especially Williams, he's had a little bit of touchdown luck, but I think he's going to get good volume, and I definitely think they could both be a RB2 for you while either of those players are out. If you have their rostered the insurance back.
Yeah, I mean, they're great options as kind of that handcuff, and both really have pretty solid standalone value as well. They both have had that value there. So if you have those guys on your team, you probably got them late in the draft. And you're probably lucking out. Honestly, you're probably either undefeated or pretty close to it. But big injury week this week in the NFL. Tough to see, but there was a lot of injuries this week. So let's just go ahead and jump in. You want to jump into the storylines for the week?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So first off, we want to start with college, right? So USC and Oregon State. That was a good game. I really liked that game. It was down to the wire, and it really looked like Oregon State was going to pull off the upset, and USC pulled it off. And you know how they pulled it off? Through their defense, right? The defense stepped up for USC when it mattered. But what I want to see in fantasy, right, is can Caleb Williams and that offense bounce back after getting kind of exposed? Their offensive line didn't play great, and honestly, it didn't look like the receivers were really getting open. Are you worried, or is this just kind of a blip in the season?
So it just depends on your expectations, right? I've said for a while that I think that USC is going to lose 2 football games this year. So I'm not surprised by this. Good on them for winning a game that matters, right? Good football teams win games when they play bad. I did not think this offense was good at all. But you're right, the defense stepped up. I don't think Oregon State's got a potent offense, but still they held them to, and they allowed 17 points to get them a victory. They got the win. That's what's important. The thing I'm starting to wonder about is, I don't know about Jordan Addison. Like, a lot of people had him pushing for, wide receiver 1 2023 class. I think he's had a good year. But outside of touchdowns, he's just been, pretty average. He's had 2 meh games. And it's not like he's been playing these good defenses. He comes off of this amazing season last year with Pickett. I just figured he'd get an upgrade with Caleb, and that he would even be better.
Well, I mean, to be fair to Jordan Addison, right? This is the only game that they've even been close in, right? So
it's true.
You don't even need. He doesn't even need to get anything more than touchdowns because they've blown him out, right? So
good point.
I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for Addison so far. Obviously, you'd like to see that increased production, but this is a team that has a lot of weapons. It's not just the Jordan Addison, Caleb Williams show, and I think people kind of misunderstand that. This isn't just a 1-man show or 2-man show. This is a really good, talented offense. Obviously, they played poorly yesterday, or not yesterday, but this past week, and. But I think they'll bounce back. I think it's kind of just a blip in the radar. And what really impressed me was just the defense. I thought the defense winning them a game is a good news for the football team in general. So let's talk about Devin Akane. What do you think about him? Can he do this? Can he replicate the production that he has right now in the pros?
So my value for A-Chain in fantasy and the NFL is going to be almost completely dependent on what happens at the NFL Combine. Because coming out of high school, he's reportedly like 5'9", 185. If he can have bumped up at weight, right, 3 years at A&M to get that weight over 200 pounds, I'm interested. Because A-Chain is very fast, and he is a good pass catcher. He's a satellite back. Like, he's not gonna, right? He's averaging 90 yards a game, right now. He's not gonna do that rushing. That was, in the NFL. But if he can have solid size, right? If he can weigh, come in at 5'9", 5'9.5", 200, 202, I'm interested. If he's 188, 191, I'm pretty much all the way up.
Yeah, so my thing with Akane, he's just your generic snap. I mean, not a generic scat back, but he is the scat back in the NFL, right? He's Michael Carter. He is, that type of back. And so the question is, can he provide enough receiving volume to make it in the NFL as a fantasy football asset? And I don't think that you should ever really expect a scat back to do that. There's not very many scat backs that are able to do that. It looks like Carter is able to do that just by himself, but he's not like an RB1 or anything like that. He's kind of an RB2, right? Like, he's not like a stud by any means. And I think that's kind of your best case scenario for Akane here. I think Devin's like in that same realm.
Yeah, if we could see those weight numbers I talked about, he would go from like a 4th round pick to like maybe a late 2nd for me in rookie drafts. Like you said, he's not going to be an RB1. He's got a low ceiling, but I'll buy in on it now. If he does get those numbers, there'll probably be some people moving up in the 1st round, and I'll stay away at that cost.
Yeah. So what do you think about Quinshon Judkins? I'll let you kind of have the floor, because I think we're going to disagree here on this one.
So the thing for me is Quinshon Judkins, he's a freshman. He's behind Zach Evans. Zach Evans is a top 8 back in the country, I think, pretty easily, maybe a top 5. And Quinshon Judkins has looked great this year, but typically it's been during blowouts where he gets a lot of carries, or this past game, Zach Evans got hurt and Judkins just completely took over, right? He's got over 100 yards rushing a game. He's got 5 rushing touchdowns. He's got minimal. He's got a couple of catches for 23 yards, not doing much in the passing game. But, to me, this could be a really good situation. What if he transferred to a USC? What if he transferred to Bama? What if he transferred to a team that he's going to be able to dominate the touches? I think he could be a total stud, approaching All-American status. And that's the only reason I say, should he transfer? It's not that he has to, because he's getting the opportunity, and right, Evans will be gone after next season, so he'll get his junior year all to him, the backfield to himself. But I'm wondering, is this in his mind? Look what I'm doing. Maybe I could get, more opportunity somewhere else.
I think him transferring would be the biggest mistake of his career.
Tell me why.
So Quinshon Judkins has actually outtouched Evans in every game except for the first in the last 2 games, right? So he's outtouched Zach Evans in both the last 2 games. One was the blowout against Georgia Tech, and the one that he got hurt, right? But he's also outgained Zach Evans in most of those games as well. So I would argue that Zach Evans is the one in danger of losing his job, not the other way around.
Wow.
I think Zach Evans, this injury opens the door for Quinshon Judkins to take over the starting role in Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss has a fantastic problem to have, in that they have 2 legitimate NFL star running backs, or at least highly rated running back recruits.
Potential top 50 picks in the NFL draft.
Right? So we're talking about a team that I feel like Quinshon Judkins is has the potential, if he can have a couple really big games, to maintain the starting job there. Now, the thing is, right, the issue with Ole Miss, and this is kind of why I don't rank Ole Miss all that highly right now, they have no ability to throw the ball. They are reliant on the running game to win games right now. And that's not going to win you games in the SEC in 2022. Right. So I think this team's a little bit overrated. But I think I think this is questionable. Saying Quinshon Judkins should transfer. He's dominated in Ole Miss. I don't see any reason why he would transfer. He looks like a perfect fit for Lane Kiffin's offense, and Zach Evans is going to be gone next year, one way or another. So,
one more year. Evans is a 24.
Yeah. I mean, but okay. I think he likely will be gone in 2023 through the transfer portal, because wow. I think it's possible that you see Quinshon Judkins just start taking over that job, or at least eating into enough touches where it could affect his draft capital, or maybe you see a situation where it's like 1A 1B like you had with Carter and Javonte Williams, in North Carolina. So,
yeah,
to me it would be
more likely, to be honest.
I think so too. I think Zach Evans is the one that would transfer over Quinshon Judkins.
Wow. So, yeah, that would certainly shock some people, me included. So I got to wonder, how high do you have Quinshon Judkins ranked in your 25 running backs? I mean, it sounds like you must have him as a top 3 back at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's up there. I think he's up there, right? There's a lot of good backs, though, man. There's a lot of good backs right now.
It's a good problem we have, huh?
Yeah, so I'm not willing to put anybody in a guaranteed top 3 other than Singleton right now, because this class looks fantastic across the board. There's so many talents for running backs. And it's just about improvement, right? How much can he improve as a receiver in the backfield, right? Because obviously he's been really good running the football, but I want to see more as a passing game before I rank him super high.
Fair enough.
But what about Emeka Egbuka or Marvin Harrison, right? So I was a critic of Marvin Harrison's this offseason a little bit. And kind of this is kind of where I was at, right? I find it hard to I found it hard to believe that maybe we're gonna see like this run of Ohio State having 7, 8 round 1 receiver prospects. I just didn't see that as like a realistic. It looks like it might be, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But it looks like Marvin Harrison is the wide receiver 3 in Ohio State. And I mean, one, that's an amazing problem for Ohio State to have. But does that hurt his draft stock, or do you have Emeka as the wide receiver 3? Like, who's your wide receiver 2? Who's your wide receiver 3?
So I'm sticking with my guy, Egbuka. I had Egbuka as number 2 going into the season when a lot of people were down on Emeka. Right, Harrison was easily a 3rd round, if not a 2nd round, Devy startup pick this offseason. I think name value is really the only reason. They basically had the same rookie year. Like, yeah, Harrison had the good game, in the Rose Bowl, last game of the year, but they were pretty much just complete, backseat, total in the backseat to they had the 3 superstars, that they had last year, which you would expect, right? You have 2, what were they? The 10th and 11th pick, the 10th and 12th pick in the NFL draft, like and then JSN is. We'll see what about the injury, but I expect him to be a 1st-round pick as well. But yeah, you talk about the streak Ohio State has. I think we got to give it to Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline, who's wasn't a superstar NFL player, but he was a longtime vet. He was a savvy player that won off of his brain and instead of like his physical traits. And he's been there for years. He's a great recruiter and he's a great coach. These wide receivers are coming out. They know the game, and they're getting the recruits, so they're talented. And I think that's why they're having so much success. So I I lean Mbuka, slightly, but I expect them both to be successful in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's a good problem to have, right? You have 3 legitimate stars again.
Yeah, they could both be first round picks too.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And then they'll probably reload again next year. But
Yeah, they sure are.
What about Troy Franklin? All right, are you trusting the production so far?
I mean, so Franklin, I really liked coming out of high school, and last year was just like gross, right? We didn't say anything, but okay, still a young player. This year, we're starting to see signs of life, and this is with Bo Nix after all, right? But I don't know. It's like, do we really trust a Pac-12 wide receiver, especially an Oregon one, like a non-USC Pac-12 wide receiver, basically? So he's talented. He's got good size, right? Physically, he has an NFL body, but I'm not quite yet back in on Troy Franklin. I was pretty high last summer in 2021, but I definitely need to see more before I'm back in on the Troy Franklin train.
Yeah, I mean, but look, let's say this: Bo Nix is the most overrated NCAA quarterback in recent memory. So the fact that he's producing with him is an achievement in and of itself. I'm not necessarily all in on Troy Franklin, but I do think he has a significantly increased in value.
Oh yeah.
So, anything else for college you want to talk about today?
Ohio State or Alabama is the number 2 team in the country. Well, who you got?
So right now I'm saying Alabama. It's because I'm a homer, but
you are. I think I'll try and be objective. I think it's Ohio State just because I've seen some serious question marks with that offense with Bama, but they've got plenty of time to fix it before the games that truly matter, are happening. So yeah. I'm not ever counting out Nick Saban and Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alabama will. It's going to be between those two.
Yeah.
So
be a 3-way combo for the national championship, I believe.
Yeah. So moving on to the NFL, right? So, the meat of the episode right here. So Russell Wilson has probably been the most disappointing player in the NFL this season, I think. Right? Whenever he got traded, we were talking about Denver Broncos might be a Super Bowl contender. Yep. And now I don't even know if this team makes the playoffs. And Russell Wilson looks like a guy who is in his 40s and 50s out there, not a guy who was, a former MVP or a former All-Pro. So
I mean, he looks terrible. Like you said, right? They brought in, he's a quarter billion, dollar quarterback now. We thought, they're going to be vying for a Super Bowl. They're certainly going to be vying for, the division title. Okay, Javonte Williams is going to be a top 5 running back, and they're going to have 2 top 15-ish wide receivers with potential to have 2 wide receiver ones, like Russell had done with DK and Lockett at times. And it was like, hey, Russell Wilson in redraft, he's got to be a top 5. If you're a championship, if you're a contender in Dynasty, all aboard the Russell train. Oh my God, this has been horrible. It's hard to watch. That game against that Sunday Night Football game was disgusting. It's like
but you act like that's different than what we've seen the last 2. Like that was nothing new compared to what we've been seeing all season.
That's just what Russell has been all year. He's got 59% completion percentage. Like, this is Russell Wilson. Like, what?
So I think this is all on Hackett. Maybe not all on Hackett, but
I hope so.
Like, I mean, well, Russell Wilson does shelve himself, but what I'm saying is, like, right, how bad does this team have to look before you're questioning the coach?
Well, I will say that final drive on Sunday night, we started to finally see, like, whoa, like, that's the Russell I know. Like, he had a nice run. He extended the play a couple of times to complete the throw. There are glimmers of it. So I'm hoping you're right, and I'm hoping this is just offensive scheme is crap, and they need to address that, and then we can get back to, seeing good football from Russell Wilson. But I'm alarmed.
Yeah, I think this is alarming. And honestly, you can't even sell him. because it's
I mean,
the
what are you
value
gonna
is so
get?
low. Yeah, the value's so low right now. Like I don't even want to sell him because
Yeah.
so you just gotta hold. Um, so what about Patrick Mahomes? What's your kind of take on his life after Tyreek Hill?
So, I mean, hey, through 3 weeks, right? If we're talking fantasy, he's looked good. He's QB4. He's got 68% completion percentage. He's 8-1 touchdown INT ratio. Um, he's really solid. He had the one huge game, right? He absolutely destroyed Arizona week 1, and then he's had a couple of average, whatever, 17, 18 point games in week 2 and 3. I think this is probably about the ceiling where you're going to get on average. You're going to have, 1 out of 4 games are like a big, there's the Patrick Mahomes type of game, the 30, 35 point fantasy game. But I think he's going to have a lot of, 18, 20, 22, 23 point games, which, points per game and full season. He'll be there. He'll be, QB6, QB4. But I think without Tyreek, he's just not in that QB1 conversation really, for a season.
Yeah, I think with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in general, I think they made a big mistake not trying to trade up in the draft to get a star wide receiver. I think they also, they really didn't get nearly enough for Tyreek Hill. It was decent value, but at the same time, like for the window that they're in, right? Like they're competing. It doesn't make sense for them to be trading guys like that. But I will say that, if Sky Moore is able to have a good second half of the season, we could be, singing a different tune. But my thing is, right, the wide receiver class this coming year doesn't look as good as the one last year did. That's kind of the downside of the 23 class is the wide receivers aren't nearly as good. Or at least they don't have the depth that, 20,
I think the depth
had.
is the biggest thing.
They have the star power, right? But are the Chiefs able to go up and get that star power?
Not the way people have been drafting wide receivers lately.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's going to be possible, right? And I think so. I think this is a good opportunity for everybody to see, like, long term. This is what Tyreek or Patrick Mahomes might be, and I think he's been impressive, at least comparatively to what I think everybody expected from him. But if the offense is going to be what I think we've seen out of this team is that they're going to have to win on defense, and in fantasy, that's bad news for Mahomes.
Yeah. So my long-term concern with Patrick is what happens if they can't get a superstar wide receiver, by the time Kelsey's gone. I mean, Kelsey's still playing amazing football, but eventually he's going to be done. So they need to find some superstar, whether it's a tight end or a wide receiver, because, Kelsey, the days after Kelsey are going to be here pretty soon.
Yeah. So, question: who do you start between Tua or Wentz?
That's tough because Tua, it's like, how healthy is he? That's the big thing for me. If that wasn't concerned, it would be Tua pretty easily. Trying to remember. I'm just checking real quick. Who's Carson playing this week? Aren't they playing Dallas?
Yeah, I'm going Tua still. I'm not a big fan of Wentz, obviously, and I don't think the injury is that much of a concern for Tua this week. Obviously, if he doesn't play, obviously that's a concern, right? But it looks like he's going to play, and it looks like I think he'll be fine. So
yeah, it looks like he's playing. As long as he's going to play, I'm going to go with Tua, and this is why. I'm a bit of a Wentz truther, but as we saw against Philly, their offensive line is weak. And they have this guy who's really good at sacking the quarterback in Dallas. You ever hear him? Micah Parsons, maybe the freaking NFL Defensive Player of the Year potentially. He will eat them, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's concerning.
Oof.
Yeah, so Waddle, I thought Waddle was a full participant in practice today. but I might be thinking of the wrong person because I haven't looked really at the injury reports yet. But I would say that Waddle does affect that decision, but I don't think Waddle's gonna miss the game either. So I'm leaning towards Tua, even with Tyreek Hill, just Tyreek Hill. I still, but I'm a Wentz hater, so I guess,
Yeah, so it looks like Waddle's going to play. Tom Pellegrosio, he's reporting today that it's expected Waddle plays. Even without Waddle, which it doesn't look like you're going to have to deal with, you still got Tyreek Hill, which I do like Wentz's weapons a lot, actually. But when he's, getting put on his back 10 times in the game, he's probably going to have 1 or 2 turnovers, and it's going to make, throwing for 300 yards a lot harder. So I guess it's I don't know. To me, it's Tua, because Tua is more likely to score 30 points, and he's less likely to score less than 10 to me, which, so give me Tua on that one.
Yeah, I think Tua is the safe.
As long as he plays.
Yeah, as long as he plays, he's the safe floor play and has a higher ceiling, in my opinion. So moving on to the running backs here. So I think the biggest storyline this week was Ezekiel Elliott versus Tony Pollard. It kind of looks like Tony Pollard is kind of, taken over as like the preferred option for a lot of people in the NFL circle. Just maybe not the Cowboys. What do you kind of think about how this situation has played out?
So I'm on Team Zeke. I think that Zeke is going to get the consistent volume. He's had like almost 15 carries exactly each week. Now, I will grant this. A lot of people say, yeah, but Pollard looks so much more explosive. Yes and no. You have to realize they're not used the same way at all. Pollard is specifically used, when out in space. He's on these exterior runs. Zeke charges up the middle. Zeke is the typical like first and second down back. But he looks pre-PCL injury last year, right? Everyone loves crap on Zeke last year. He looked really good last year before that knee injury, and he looks really good now. He's averaging nearly 5 yards a carry. And the only real issue with him is he's got no receiving game. He's, for his whole career, been a very good receiving back. He's only got 5 targets, and he has -5 receiving yards on the year. Right? He had the touchdown last week, and that's why he had a solid week. The 2 weeks prior, he didn't have a good fantasy week because he didn't get a touchdown. So my thought is Zeke is going to be used more. He outsnaps Pollard. He's a way better pass protector than Tony Pollard is, which is going to be important all year long because they don't have a good offensive line. I think they're close. I really do. I think they're quite close, but I lean Zeke.
So I think fantasy-wise, Zeke's the better option. I don't think it's all that close, mostly just because Zeke gets the goal line work, and I think Zeke has a better volume. Now, Tony Pollard is obviously a very good standalone running back, and at the value you drafted him at, he's probably, I assume with where most people are drafting him that you got good value, right? Now, if I was in the NFL, I want Tony Pollard, right? And that's just because of the contract, and I think he provides something because what Zeke does for their offense is something that I think is at least somewhat replaceable comparatively to Tony Pollard, but that gets into the whole argument of like, why do you pay running backs? Should you pay running backs and stuff like that? I'm camp never pay running backs, but right. Guess what? Zeke got paid. Guess what? Zeke's going to have the majority of the backfield because he got paid. So, so what about Devin Singletary? Do you trust this increased production from the last few games?
So, yeah, I mean, it dates back to the end of last year. The weird thing is it's almost completely reversed. End of last year, it was because he was getting, 15 plus carries a game, and he was being used a lot to, in the goal line situations. He's RB22 through 3 weeks in full PPR. And that's mainly because he has 16 targets, 13 catches. He's got, 1 total touchdown of the year. Only has 80 rushing yards. Right, he's been very inefficient as a rusher. He's averaging less than 3.5 yards per carry. I think Singletary is like, right? They remember Buffalo tried to sign J.D. McKissick. It's almost like they're trying to use him in that role, which is so weird because they drafted James Cook, who is more like he's the back for that. So I think Singletary is a nice best ball piece. I'll put it that way. That's where I really have value with Singletary. It's because I don't have to want to I don't want to put him in my lineup, unless I'm like got a bye or got an injury. If I'm trying to win a championship, unless every other position the running back stacked and I'm starting him week in and week out, I'm probably not, winning a title. But I think he can be definitely an RB3 and push to be, like RB22 as he is now for the whole year.
So if I own Devin Singletary, I am reaching out to every single owner that has DeAndre Swift and David Montgomery, and I'm offering Devin Singletary straight to try to offload him and get as much as I can.
I like that.
Why? Because, right, like you said, the rushing is completely inconsistent. The targets are why he is kind of producing, but that's not maintainable, right? He's not that type of guy, and they drafted a guy that's better at receiving, or at least was expected to be better at receiving than Devin Singletary, right? So one, this kind of, I said this too, I think when James Cook got drafted, James Cook was my number 3 going into the year, but at the same time, I was always saying, man, I just don't want anybody in this class after, running back 3 or 4. I don't really want any of them in the draft, especially if, where I thought they were going to get drafted. But if I'm the Bills and I wanted a running back, why not trade up and get Kenneth Walker, right? Or go get something like that. Trade up, get Breece Hall. It just kind of makes me question their thought process when they're evaluating running backs. And honestly, I don't want anything to do with any running back in Buffalo because Josh Allen's there, because they like to throw the ball. I don't want anything to do with them. If I can sell them, absolutely trying to sell them.
I like it.
So what about Najee Harris? So volume has always been his calling card with Pittsburgh. Is that enough this year?
Doesn't look like it. So the only chance there's 2 actually. There's 2 chances. One, right? He injured his foot in the preseason. They re-agitated it. I think it was week 2 or it was week 1. It was going into the New England game. Right. So maybe that's a little bit why he's slow. Right. His yards per carry is abominable. The other possibility is if we see Kenny Pickett, and if Kenny Pickett brings life to this offense. Those are the 2 chances to get, that top 10, top 5 production again. Right now, he's sitting at a back-end RB2. He's got great volume. But this is exactly what I was worried about when I was doing startup drafts and when people were trying to trade, those top-end players in the offseason, because I just didn't see a world that was very likely where he was going to repeat as a top 5 running back. I don't trust the offense. The offensive line's garbage.
Yeah, so I'll say this. You're saying the volume might not be enough. I'm saying the volume might not even be there soon. Jaylen Warren's been impressive.
They're starting to use him a little bit. I'm wondering, though, is that, to try and lighten the load because he just had the injury? Or is it like, hey, we're going to keep doing this going forward to try and prevent any future injuries, too? That is, I think, the big question on the volume.
Jaylen Warren, honestly, you could argue he looked better in that Thursday night game. Other than the fumble that Jaylen Warren had, which obviously he got sat on the bench immediately after that.
Yeah.
But other than that, he actually looked pretty good comparatively. And I think that's a real danger to Najee Harris's volume. And I think this is a lost year for Najee Harris in terms of his fantasy value. I think it'll probably go up after they can get some offensive line help next year. But I think this is kind of a lost year for him. So moving on to the wide receivers, right? So sticking with the Thursday night game, Amari Cooper, right? Are the increased targets that Amari Cooper got, are those going to be maintainable? Is that going to be something that you see long term?
Well, if it is, then that'll be one of my biggest misses on the offseason. I don't doubt Amari Cooper's talent. I never did. I think he's a great player. I just really worried about Jacoby Brissett. Game 1, I looked like a very smart person. Games 2 and 3, not so smart. He's had top 10 wide receiver season both weeks, and their offense honestly is starting to look pretty good. So I'm going to kind of hedge and say, we're not going to see, wide receiver 8, wide receiver 7 going forward, but I think we can definitely rely on mid to high end our wide receiver 2 numbers.
Yeah, I think Amari Cooper is a must start right now. So it's funny actually. I sat him on the bench. I thought I had replaced Keenan Allen with him, and I did not. So Amari Cooper was on my bench, while Keenan Allen. I had to find a way to replace Keenan Allen and with Amari Cooper actually on the bench. So that was kind of annoying. But I think Amari Cooper is in one of those situations now where you're going to see a situation, I think, where Amari Cooper is the only feature of that offense and the passing game. Because it looks like, to me, like Jacoby Brissett, Brissett just wants to throw the ball to Amari Cooper every single play, if he's going to throw the ball, right? So I think this is a prime opportunity for Amari Cooper to dominate that wide receiver room in targets. And if he can get 10 targets, because it looks like that's about what he's going to get based off what the offenses look like so far. I think he's a must start, and I think he's somebody that's going to be a lot better than what people expected.
Yeah. Do you think that what we saw this past Thursday with Njoku is going to be kind of more of the normal? I mean, Njoku got a ton of targets. He looked great. Or is that going to just be the total one-off, the random games that happen every once in a while?
I'm not a believer in Njoku, and it's just because he's so inconsistent, right? I can't get on the Njoku train until I see it for an entire season.
Yeah. I've always wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, he's had a terrible quarterback, and that's been the issue. But I get it. And I mean, this year, through 3 weeks since we've seen him. But I'm with you. I think Cooper is really the only pass-catching weapon you're going to be starting with confidence for at least a few more weeks. You got to see more from other people.
Yeah. And it's with Njoku. It's literally, it's just I've been bitten in the past. I've been on the Njoku train for a couple years beforehand, and every time I've just been like, stash him. He's gonna blow up, and guess what? He doesn't. So, I'm a little gun shy there.
Yeah.
But what about Hollywood Brown? Right, he is quietly, I think, putting up a pretty good season. Right,
he's great first 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's been a star for Arizona, and I think he's really making Baltimore question why they traded him. And it was questionable when they traded him in the first place, but I think it's even more questionable now. But what do you think this can keep on going after Hopkins comes back? Or
so here's the thing: not only has Hollywood been great, he's been great in spite of the fact that overall Arizona looked terrible on offense. Kyler has been okay, but their offense doesn't look good. So if they stay at this pace where they're just operating as a very middle of the pack offense in the league, no, I think that Hopkins is going to take away enough that Hollywood is much more the boom bust type of player we were used to in Baltimore. If they can get their offense going and Kyler starts playing really well, yeah, I mean, we could be looking at 2 top 15, top 10 wide receivers. Everyone knows what Nuke can do, and Hollywood has shown, moments of brilliance throughout his career, but he's starting to show the consistency through these first 3 weeks. So what I need is the offense and Kyler to ascend in order for me to have trust this continues
Yeah, so I'll say this, right? I agree with you. The Arizona offense has not looked great so far this season. Now, the reason that that's also a reason though that I'm saying this. I am trying to sell Hollywood Brown before DeAndre Hopkins comes back because I think that Cliff Kingsbury will be fired either mid or at the end of the season. And if there's one thing that
extension though,
I don't care, right? I think if you look at this team, they have vastly underperformed in the second half of each season. They look terrible this season. They could get a top 10 pick this year, and if they get a top 10 pick, you got to fire them because you already have your star quarterback, who you just paid. You got to fire your coach. Got to fire him. There's no other option.
I think the option is they're just gonna grit their teeth and play the blame game.
So
I'm not saying
fired?
It's not the smart thing to do, but
who gets fired? Somebody's got to get fired. If you have a top 10 draft pick with a superstar quarterback, you got to get fired. Somebody's got to get fired. Unless you just won a Super Bowl, like you got to get fired.
They'll blame somebody, but they're not blaming the GM or head coach. They just locked them back up.
Yeah, I'm trying to sell Hollywood mostly because I think this team's about to get blown up.
Yeah. I mean, sell Hollywood and then sell Nuke 2 games into when he comes back after he's got 25 targets and 2 touchdowns and
and then go on top of it. Go ahead and sell Kyler Murray too.
Well, I've been trying to sell Kyler a while, but yeah, I'm with you too. I'm really worried about this whole offense. I think they are very poorly run as an organization, and I don't really believe I don't believe in Kyler. I think Kyler there's a reason they put that study hours clause in his contract. I don't think he's a professional. Talented is just about anybody, but I don't think he has the off the field mentality needed to be a superstar quarterback in the league.
Yeah. So let's go into the rookie discussion, right? Drake London versus Garrett Wilson. Which one do you want after 3 weeks of the season?
Well, let me start out with saying who I had a month ago and who I had 5 months ago. It was Garrett Wilson, number 1 at wide receiver, and it was Drake London, number 2 at wide receiver. They were very, very close. I had a number of drafts where I was drafting and I was on the clock, and they were the highest players on my board, and I was like, God, you know what? Let me just trade back one spot, pick up a second round pick up whatever, because I almost felt in the same. But I always gave Wilson the edge, and I'll answer this. It depends on the league format. In Dynasty, I'm sticking to that. I still prefer Wilson. In redraft, I'm going to go with Drake London, only because I don't know what's going to happen when Zach Wilson comes back. It's already been said Zach Wilson's playing week 4. It's very possible that Garrett Wilson gets better with Zach's return, but it's also possible that Elijah Moore starts getting used a lot more with Zach Wilson's return. Drake London's looked great regardless of Kyle Pitts being there or not. So this year, I think London's probably going to be better. Long term, I still slightly prefer Wilson, but I think they're both great players.
Yeah. So I'll say this. So I actually got into an argument on Twitter recently. Somebody had questioned when I said that Drake London has the potential to be a top wide receiver in Dynasty in the same tiers like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, right? And I just don't understand how that's a question, right? Drake London has put in a massive amount of a huge target share as a rookie, which I don't know if most people know this, but that's unheard of. Even Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, they didn't dominate the targets so much as they just had really good production.
Not right away, so they certainly did.
Definitely not right away. Justin Jefferson was actually he didn't start really hitting until I think it was like week 5 or 6 of his rookie year.
He was unstartable until the 3rd week. That was when we finally started seeing it, but it wasn't like you said until 5, 6, and you're like, okay, this is real.
Yeah. Yep. So I think it's crazy that somebody's questioning that Drake London has the ability to be a top 3, even top 1.
He's got the potential.
Sure. He's got the potential to do it, right? See if he stays healthy and he gets a better quarterback, sky's the limit. So I'll go with Drake London in Dynasty. And the reason that I'll go with Drake London is because I think he's a better PPR weapon. He looks like the guy that's going to get a huge target share. Garrett Wilson, I think it depends on the quarterback, right? And I think he's also kind of he's going to be in that same. He's going to probably be in the Jamar Chase like kind of mold where you're going to have a few really big games, and then might have some really bad games.
I could see that.
Uh,
that route he ran to win the game against Cleveland, he looked exactly like Devontae Adams. Do you see it? They were probably on the 2. It was like 4th and goal from the 2 or 3 or whatever, and he's pressed man, and he just cuts in, cuts out, basically made the guy fall on his face. Caught a little hitch route in the end zone. It's like,
yeah,
you're kidding me? Week 2 as a rookie, you're doing that. But to your point, if you don't have the QB, that doesn't get utilized as much.
And Drake London's just been just as impressive without the quarterback too. So if you have this problem, you're living life.
Yeah, hopefully you just grabbed them both. You had 2 high first round picks and you snatched them both up.
Yeah, I think Drake London was my biggest miss as a going into the season of like last year, because I kind of thought it was a kind of a fluke. USC, they're going to throw the ball a lot. I was thinking, man, it's not going to translate, And yeah, Drake London has been that guy, especially even last year, right? Last year he blew up, and that's when I started to really pay attention to him. Last year was when he blew up at the beginning of the year. I want to throw some love into Chris Olave though, because he just won Rookie of the Month, and he's been really good this year too. You were down on him. I wanted to kind of say.
I think I was wrong.
He's been really good.
I'd say he's been fantastic through 3 weeks. I've been impressed.
And he has just as bad of a quarterback situation in New Orleans, which I'm all in on the Pelicans now. We've moved on. We're done.
Jameis just needs to get healthy. He looked great week 1, and he freaking breaks his back week 2, and then everyone's crapping on him. It's like, dude, the dude's playing with a broken back. Like, give him a break.
So it's funny, right? We have this thing in New Orleans, like you can't have multiple teams in New Orleans be good at the same time.
No.
So it's either the Pelicans or the Saints. The Pelicans have Zion Williamson back, and they were on pace to win almost 50 games without Zion. So I think the Pelicans are going to be the team to watch in New Orleans. So I'm all out on the Saints. Calling it a year. We're done. Move on to basketball.
Wrapping it up already.
Yep. So, but anyway, so Drake London, I'm taking Drake London over Garrett Wilson, but but moving on to tight ends, right? So biggest surprise, Tyler Conklin. I don't think anybody would have ever expected Tyler Conklin to do this.
All right, so I'll say I didn't expect him to do this, but you check the receipts. I was pretty high on Tyler Conklin. Right, Irv Smith went down last year in Minnesota, and Conklin was like tight end 17. He looked pretty good, and guess what? They gave him $8 million per year in New York, real money. And I was thinking, all right, you've got a young QB. He'll probably throw a fair amount to the tight end. But no, my God, I wasn't thinking it was going to be tight end 4, 24 targets through 3 weeks.
That's with Flacco, though. So
yes,
I will say that I think you actually have that backward. I think the young quarterback is going to be less likely to throw to the tight end and running back than the vet.
Yes, compared to Flacco, yes. But I honestly, in early August, I wasn't even considering the fact that Flacco is going to be starting for 3 weeks. But you're right. I think Flacco is more helpful to Conklin's value in fantasy than Zach Wilson.
So I think it's time to sell. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
I think it's absolutely time to sell. You take that 22-point game to the bank, and I think that was in a tight end premium league that I looked at that. But he had like 8 catches, 80 some odd yards. So I think
been great.
Sell them. Just get anything you can, sell them.
Yeah. In a world where basically 2 tight ends have been good this year. Well, 3. I think Ertz has been good too. But I mean, Conklin's been very reliable, but I'm with you. I mean, if you can sell him, that's the thing. The most savvy dynasty owners what are they really going to pay for Conklin? Can you even get a second?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't pay.
I definitely wouldn't do it.
More than a fourth.
Yeah, like
if I'm competing, I might pay.
Be like, here's my third. Here you go, pal.
Yeah. So,
but that being said, I still think I'm keeping my take from August. I'm not letting this change. I was thinking that he could be a decent tight end too. Tight end 18, tight end 14, solid second tight end in case for your bye week, in case you have one miss a week or two. Now, I didn't like matching him up with the George Kittle because typically you're expecting Kittle to miss 4 or 5 weeks. I don't want to, deal with Conklin that long.
All right, so we got a question about would you trade JT for Leonard Fournette and Amari Cooper?
So to me, it all depends on the format. And this question, I'm assuming it's a redraft question. Now, redraft, really, I guess it depends about your roster construction. So I still think JT's going to be very good. He's had a couple of down weeks in a row. And Fournette has also been a little down too. I believe in Fournette. I think Fournette's going to get right as Tampa Bay gets right. And we talked about Amari Cooper, which we both think he's going to be good. I think I'll sell JT.
Yeah, so it's a PPR Superflex League redraft. So you're selling JT. Right, I'm only selling JT if I'm desperate for a receiver.
Well, I guess that's the thing. Like
because if I wouldn't want JT unless I'm like desperate for receivers, and I think that is fair value. But if I have enough receivers to start, you could send the lineup. But yeah, I think that's kind of the dependent for me. I would probably just stick with JT though.
Yeah, the lineup really matters, right? Like if you're going to be swapping in Fournette for JT, and then you're like, oh, do I pump out like Devonta Smith? He was my wide receiver 3, and I make him my wide. He's now my flex, or he's my first man up off the bench because I put Cooper in. Then no, but if you got like, I'm in a 12-team PPR redraft league, 3 wide receivers. I went heavy running back, and my third wide receiver is Thielen, and like I'm not very happy with that. If I could, get Thielen on the bench for Fournette, who I still think will end up as an RB1, and then I can throw Cooper in, I would do that.
Yeah, so what about Dallas Goedert? We'll kind of talk about Goedert while we're
So Goedert, right? Goddard's been one of like the favorite sleepers of dynasty tight ends for a while now. And honestly, this offseason with thirds, he kind of got left for dead, at least after AJ Brown got traded, because the theory was like, oh, they can't all get the targets. Well, Goddard's looked pretty great. I mean, he hasn't had huge target numbers. He only has 14 through 3 games, but he's got good yardage. And, I think this offense is so good that he's going to get decent touchdown numbers. So I think he's firmly in that tier 2 of tight ends, which to me, he used to be, a month ago, he was at the end of tier 2, like almost tier 3.
All right. So the lineup here is he has Jonathan Taylor, James Conner, Cortland Sutton, Christian Kirk, Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb. It's an 8-team league. And he has Kareem Hunt, Rashad Penny, Kenneth Walker on the bench.
You go first. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm sticking with the JT in this scenario, just because I think I'd like your depth here. You have 2 backup wide receivers realistically in each of your flexes, in Keenan Allen and CeeDee Lamb, and then you have enough backups as running back to where you can you don't need Leonard Fournette or Amari Cooper, because you're both of them are more than likely they're going to be on your bench or they're replacing one of the Keenan Allen if he's hurt, for example, right? So I would just stick with with JT, and then I would start either Kareem Hunt or DK Metcalf in Keenan Allen's spot, assuming he doesn't play. So
yeah, I mean, you're telling me you got DK Metcalf and Kareem Hunt as your bench players, in an 8-team league. I'm keeping the star power in that situation. I was kind of assuming it'd be a 12-team league where depth is more important. When you're in an 8-team league, star power is more important because, right, naturally just people have more depth, and you've already got good receivers. Your running backs have been a little disappointing. It sounds like you've just kind of gotten unlucky, right? Keenan Allen's an absolute stud wide receiver, top 10 type of player, but he's been hurt. I would say ride it out. I think they're going to get Jonathan Taylor involved. So, I mean, just to look back at 2021, Jonathan Taylor was like RB, I don't know, like 40 or like 35 through 2 weeks. And obviously we know he finishes RB1. So he's got the talent. I'm not worried about him. I'm keeping Taylor in this league.
Yeah, I agree with you. And my thing too, right? So you're like with JT, he has underperformed, right? And Kirk has been a really good sleeper pick. If you got him at the the end of your draft, because a lot of people really hated Kirk, and a lot of people hate Kirk because of the contract that he got. But the contract is honestly doing him wonders in fantasy because he's the only option there right now. But yeah, I mean, I think JT's going to bounce back, right? Every running back that got drafted in the first round this year has underperformed pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So honestly, all the running backs are underperforming right now. So stick with the talent. You already have proven that he's RB1, and guess what? He started slow last year too. So hope for the big boom that you got last year. I think that's kind of the go-to there. But for Dallas Goedert, I agree with you, right? I don't think he's gonna enter the tier 1 of tight ends this year, and I just think that's because he got AJ Brown and Devontae Smith in the same realm. Or the same offense, and I think that keeps him in the realm of tight end 2. I mean, it's tough for me because Dallas Goedert's a huge talent, but I just don't think he's going to enter tier 1. But this year, tier 1's been pretty bad. So
yeah, I love the player, but I'm still ranking him as I don't know. I haven't looked at my rankings in a couple of weeks. Probably tight end 6 at best.
All right. So last little bit, right? So what are you looking forward to next week? Any specific game that you're looking forward to?
Well, I mean, look no further than tonight. I want to see if can Tua, can he overcome this injury? Can he continue this winning streak? And then additionally, right, this is the battle of, it was tank for Tua, and then it turned into we want Joe Burrow. They're the number 1 and 2 QBs taken that year. Let's see, can Cincy get kind of off the mat? They've looked pretty bad to start this year. That's my first thing I'm looking at.
Yeah. Man,
what are you expecting? Who are you taking tonight? Who's going to get the W?
I'm taking the Dolphins.
Okay.
So I'll say this, man. We were saying last year, the reason that they shouldn't have taken Jamar Chase, they should have taken Sewell, and that's playing out this year. I think Jamar Chase is an amazing talent. Not trying to take away the talent that Jamar Chase had. They went to the Super Bowl, but this offensive line continues to play like this, Joe Burrow might have another season-ending injury. That's how bad the offensive line has been this year.
I mean, this is what happened to Andrew Luck. He had years upon years of crap line, and he had to retire at 28, 29?
Yeah. I mean, and I feel bad for Joe, but I think it's going to continue. I think this offensive line has not performed well, and they got to get better. But For me, yeah, that's the Thursday night game is going to be where it's at. I'm really looking forward to the two marquee matchups in the SEC this year, or this week, I should say. Got Alabama versus Arkansas, and so what about Will Levis? What are you kind of looking forward to in that game that he's playing this week?
So, right, this is 4-0 versus 4-0. SEC East versus SEC West. Kentucky is coming down to play Ole Miss. Right, we just talked about Ole Miss. They have a great running game, but I think Kentucky matches up pretty well because they have a pretty stout front. They looked good running against two good running backs against Florida. Now, they're not quite on the level of what Ole Miss has, but they're pretty good. And Levis has looked good. I mean, he's not. I never thought he was going to play like Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. I never expected that, but I've liked what I've seen. This is another big game. His worst game of the year by far was against Florida, the big game under the lights. At an away game. So I want to see what happens in round 2 of that.
Yeah, I got Ole Miss losing this game. I think I got Kentucky winning, and that's not because of Will Levis. Actually, I think it's going to be because Ole Miss is going to lose the game because they can't throw the ball.
Yeah, right.
I think it's going to be a
Jackson Dart, was a pretty big, sweetheart for a lot of these Devi, analysts that are out here, and I liked him. I certainly liked him more than you. I'm pretty sure if I remember right, you were quite a hater. And to be honest, through 4 weeks, it kind of looked right to be so. He's not looked well.
Yeah. It looks like Ole Miss is really missing Matt Corral, in my opinion. But I'll go to the guy that I was really hating on, DJU versus Devin Leary. So DJU was very, very improved last week against Wake Forest. Now Wake Forest has not looked. Wake Forest is not very good. They're overrated. They're a really bad defense, and I got to give DJU his flowers. Like, he played well. He balled out, and he looks like the guy. He looks like he has regained some confidence. And so I was wrong there, but I still would rather. I think K Klubnik gives them a better chance to win, but if DJU is going to play like that, you can't sit him.
Yeah, I honestly, I think you're totally right about the confidence. The confidence is a big thing for DJU. I think it got just destroyed against Georgia last year, and it didn't recover. And they've slowly been building up this year. And last week was great. They finally had some freaking plays made by the wide receivers, which is another issue.
It helps playing against a bunch of cupcakes the first 3 weeks of the season.
You know what? Yes, but in their situation, it's exactly what they needed. College, they don't get preseason the way the NFL does. So get the guy feeling really in rhythm, with real game time stuff. So I'm by no means all the way back in on DJU. I was the fool that took him, I think, at 105 in my Devi startup draft. Whatever it was, 15 months ago. But there's some hope there now. Devin Leary, right? Devin Leary, he was one of my guys this going into this year, and he against ECU, I think that was week 1. He didn't look good. They didn't look good. They nearly lost ECU, but quietly, he's looked really good the last few weeks. So I'm actually interested in both of these QBs to see if they can continue on their the trend that they've had these recently.
Yeah, and quickly, let's just go through the last two here. T-Law making strides. He played well last week. And then Josh Allen versus Lamar. Kind of what are you looking towards in those two games?
Well, I mean, so for me, right, Trevor Lawrence, he finally has an actual football coach and organization around him. He's starting to look good. By no means is he amazing right now, but he's improving. He's getting better, and that's what I want to see. All of a sudden, he's playing against a pretty darn good defense that is beat up on a lot of teams. So, is this a total clunker, or can he at least have a solid game?
Yeah, I just think with T-Law, he's showing that he was not he's not the generational prospect that I think people, everybody had kind of planted him as. And he really needs to improve a lot in order to, make that franchise savior that he was supposed to be when he came to Jacksonville. And then Josh Allen, Lamar. That's a great game. That's if you're not watching that, you're messing up.
Yeah, that's
great
quarterback
matchup.
one. I think we're going to see fireworks. Well, actually, here's the thing. I don't know. Like, I don't think that Baltimore can stop Buffalo. I don't. They've looked terrible. But I mean, even Miami, Miami beat Buffalo, but they still only scored 21 points. I don't know. Can you think Lamar can single-handedly keep him in the game?
No. I mean, they're going to stay in the game because I think they're going to
keep them in the game, but I don't see them winning.
No. Yeah. And I called Dolphins winning, by the way. I don't know if you remember that, but I missed that.
I missed that.
I called it.
I certainly didn't.
Episode, yeah.
I said maybe I caused it because I think last week I said, "Can this team go 17-0?" Question mark.
I did. Yeah. That's what happened.
You can blame me, Buffalo fans. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that's what we're looking forward to. I think it's going to be a great week of football this week. A lot of really good games coming up. So.
Yeah. This past week was a little weird. They had quite a few injuries. I'm hoping to have a really great week this week. Really excited. Some really good games coming. Enjoy the game tonight. Is there anything else you have, Robert, or should we close this out?
No, I think we're all good.
Yeah. So please, hey, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, share, comment, get us on Twitter. You can see both our handles right there on the screen. We'd love to interact with you. It's really great to have these questions from the audience. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And Robert, thank you. This was fun.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, guys.